"Don't jump," said a struggling single dad. The girl he saved turned out to be a CEO LCEO, Stories for Sleep. Before we dive in, I want to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Drop your city in the comments so we can see just how far this story travels. And when we reach the end, I dare you to give it a rating from 0 to 10, because this one just might break your heart. Now, lean back and let the story begin. The storm tore through the midnight sky, lightning carving jagged scars above Brooklyn Bridge. Beneath its pale, flickering glow, a weary man clutched his sleeping daughter close, yet still found the strength to reach for a young woman slipping from the edge of the railing. One arm holding on to life, the other holding on to hope. Life and death balanced on the razor edge of seconds. But he didn't know the girl he was saving was no ordinary stranger. She was the daughter of a billionaire CEO, an heiress draped in privilege, yet drowning in a despair no one could see. Why was it that a penniless single father, broken, exhausted, and unseen, was the only one strong enough to pull her back from the darkness? And what fate waited for them after this storm? Liam Carter, 32, once a firefighter, now worked grueling shifts as a laborer to keep food on the table for his 2-year-old daughter. That night, he left the construction site late, his shirt heavy with cement dust and rain. Emma had already fallen asleep against his chest, her tiny breath warm against his weary heart. His body begged for rest, but he pushed on step by step across the endless steel span of Brooklyn Bridge, the golden lamps painting his hollow cheeks and sleepless eyes. On the other side stood Aurora Whitmore, 19, daughter of a billionaire. She leaned against the cold iron rails, her gown soaked through her golden hair, tangled in the wind. Behind her was a world of penthouses, supercars, and champagne nights. Yet inside, her heart was empty, suffocated by power duty and the weight of an arranged marriage. Tonight, she had chosen this bridge to be her final silence. And then destiny cut through the storm with a single cry. "Don't jump." The shout of a desperate father ripped through the rain. In the split second when Aurora's footing faltered, Liam tightened his grip on his daughter with one arm, and with the other lunged to seize her hand. The storm swallowed their breath, but in that instant of life and death, their eyes locked. Her despair meeting his hope, her darkness colliding with his light. Now I want to ask you, if you were standing in that storm, which would you believe has the greater power, wealth, and privilege, or the heart of a penniless single dad? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how this moment speaks to you. Part 1. The life or death moment. Rain lashed down like whips against the pavement. At midnight, the Brooklyn Bridge stood deserted, haunted only by the moaning of the wind, like wandering souls drifting in the storm. Street lamps flickered weakly, their broken lights spilling across wet iron beams, turning the bridge into a silver-gray stage where fate itself was about to be decided. Liam Carter hunched forward, his thin jacket plastered to his back by rain. In his arms, little Emma slept soundly, her pink cheek pressed against her father's chest, her tiny breaths steady even as the storm raged. To him, she was everything. His calloused hand gripped the edge of his jacket tighter, wrapping it around his daughter, shielding her from the merciless cold. Every step felt heavy as stone, but his heart kept him moving because a father is not allowed to stop. And then he saw her, a young woman standing on the railing where one strong gust of wind could send her into the abyss. Aurora Whitmore. Her golden hair hung in soaked, tangled strands. The white crystal-studded gown clung to her trembling frame, rain-carving lines down her skin like icy knives. Her arms spread wide, her bare feet slipping against cold steel. Eyes shut tight, as if she were waiting for the final sentence to fall. Liam's chest tightened. He had once watched people rush into fire. He had seen the last breath leave his wife's body, but this moment felt sharper than death itself. He had no choice. "Don't jump." His cry ripped through the storm, tearing the night in half. Aurora's eyes flew open. In that instant, her foot slipped. Her small frame pitched forward, plunging toward the black, raging East River below. Emma startled awake and screamed her cry, cutting through the storm. Liam lunged forward, clutching his daughter in one arm, reaching out with the other. And destiny just this once chose him. His fingers closed around Aurora's fragile wrist. Her skin was ice-slick as mud, but he gripped hard, biting down on his lip until he tasted blood. Nothing existed but the storm, the pounding of his heart, and the prayer bursting out of his chest. "I'm holding my daughter in one hand, but I can't let you go. Please, don't let go." Aurora's eyes widened. Despair met hope. Darkness collided with light. The sharp crack of bone against metal rang out as Liam's knee slammed the railing. Pain shot white-hot through his leg, the world swimming dark. But his hand never loosened from her wrist. He knew if he let go for even 1 second, she was gone forever. Aurora screamed, her body dangling over the edge, rain slicing across her pale skin. Her free hand clawed helplessly at the air, her legs kicking wildly. Each desperate movement yanked harder on Liam's arm until his muscles trembled with strain. Emma wailed, her sobs echoing across the bridge. The child didn't understand death. She only saw her father crying out in the storm. Liam pressed her close against his chest, fighting to keep balance while his other arm trembled with the weight of saving a stranger. "Stop fighting!" Liam shouted, his voice breaking. "You'll slip right through my hands." Aurora choked her voice, cracking through rain and tears. "I don't want to, but I have nothing left to hold on to. Let me go." The words tore through Liam's heart. He remembered Sarah, his wife, her final scream, swallowed by fire before she vanished. He had been powerless then, and now fate was testing him again. No. His roar shook with pain and fury. "I lost the woman I loved. I will not lose another soul, not tonight." His body trembled, fingers numb, but he poured every ounce of strength into the grip of his hand. Bit by bit, he pulled knees, bleeding lungs ripping apart with every breath. Aurora's wrist slipped further, his heart tearing open. He growled against the storm. "Don't give up. Look at me. I'm here. I won't let you fall." Their eyes locked, one soul shattered by loss, the other trapped in a life never truly lived. For a single suspended heartbeat, the entire world held its breath. The storm screamed around them. Aurora's hair whipped across his face, salted with rain and tears. His hand burned with pain, veins bulging, ready to burst. The weight of her body dragged him toward the void. And then Emma's voice broke through, high and trembling. "Daddy, don't let go." "Daddy." The word stabbed into his heart. He lifted his eyes, meeting the innocent gaze of his daughter. She didn't understand life or death, but she knew her father was her anchor. If he let go now, she would lose more than Aurora. She would lose her faith that he could protect her. A surge of strength roared through him, primal and fierce. He bellowed through the storm, Aurora. Hold on to me. Don't let this hand slip. You don't know. Tomorrow might be the beginning you've been waiting for. Aurora sobbed, lips trembling blue. I have nothing left. No one. Yes, you do. Liam's voice broke raw and bleeding. You have me, and you have her. We're right here. With one final pull, Liam heaved with everything he had. Aurora's foot scraped the iron, giving her the leverage to kick upward. He wrapped his arm around her waist, dragging her over the railing. The three of them collapsed onto the soaked bridge. With a crash, bodies tangled on the wet pavement. Aurora curled into herself, sobbing in jagged, broken gasps. Emma wriggled free of her father's hold and crawled toward her tiny fingers, brushing Aurora's cheek. Her small voice whispered through hiccuping tears, "Don't cry. Please don't cry." Aurora's eyes widened, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in years, someone touched her, not for money, not for power, not for duty, but because their hearts couldn't bear to let her go. Liam slumped back, chest heaving, every nerve trembling. But as his eyes fell on Aurora alive and Emma still safe, a long, shuddering breath escaped his lips. We made it. We survived. Three fragile souls clung together, the storm easing its rage around them. What had nearly been lost to death now flickered like a fragile flame of life. Aurora trembled violently, her fist clutching Liam's sleeve, as if letting go would send her plummeting again. Her breath came in jagged sobs, hair plastered across her pale face. Why? Her voice broke into pieces. Why would you risk everything? You had your little girl in your arms. You could have lost her too. Liam's chest still heaved with exhaustion, his voice a rasp of fire and gravel. He looked at Emma, then at Aurora, and spoke with quiet steel. Because I know what it is to lose everything, and I swore I would never stand by and watch someone slip away again. Aurora froze. The words hit her like lightning, sharp, unrelenting, undeniable. Her lips quivered, then she broke into sobs, the sound raw, like an abandoned child. I don't want to die, but I don't know how to live anymore. I'm so tired, so alone. Emma, in her innocent way, crawled into Aurora's lap and wrapped her tiny arms around her. That small embrace pierced straight through Aurora's armor. She stiffened, then trembling, returned the embrace. And for the first time in years, she let herself weep into the warmth of another human being. Liam turned his face away, his vision blurred by rain and memory. Flames filled his mind again, the fire, Sarah's scream, the emptiness that followed. His voice cracked, but he forced the words out. I lost my wife, lost my whole world. Only this little girl kept me here. Without her, I wouldn't be alive. Aurora lifted her tear-swollen eyes to him. In the fractured glow of the bridge lights, she saw it clearly. Her pain was not unique. She was not alone. Two broken souls, one bound by grief, the other by chains, collided in a single truth. Both needed a chance to live again. The storm softened, its rage spent. The rain fell heavy but gentler now, dripping onto the steel and pooling beneath them. Aurora leaned her head against Liam's shoulder, trembling, her sobs fading into quiet gasps. She no longer cried like someone ready to give up, but like someone finally held back from the edge. Her fingers clutched his wrist, desperate, unwilling to release him. "You don't even know who I am," she whispered, voice raw. "You know nothing about me." Liam's gaze was steady, unwavering. "I don't need to. Pain is real, and anyone in pain deserves to be saved." Silence settled over them, broken only by the rhythm of 3 hearts and the whisper of rain. Aurora looked down, cradling Emma, who pressed her cheek against her like she belonged there. Aurora's sobs broke again, but this time they carried the fragile relief of being seen. Soaked to the bone, Liam drew them both close. In the dim glow of the Brooklyn Bridge, they were no longer a penniless single dad, a billionaire's daughter, and a child. They were simply 3 hearts finding their way back to life. And in that trembling, rain-soaked embrace, a new destiny began. Part 2. Ghosts of the Past. At the far end of the bridge, an old bus stop groaned in the wind. Rusted tin sheets rattled under the rain, the flickering fluorescent bulb above casting a pale, sickly light onto the damp concrete floor. Liam laid Emma sideways across the wooden bench, draping his jacket over her small body, his calloused hands rubbing gently to keep her warm. Aurora sat across from him, pulling that same jacket tighter around her trembling shoulders. Her lips were blue, her wet hair plastered against her cheeks, her eyes still dazed from what had almost been her last breath. In the distance, an ambulance siren wailed through the storm, then faded into silence, leaving behind only the damp smell of iron and asphalt. Aurora lowered her gaze and noticed Liam's hand as he unscrewed a water bottle. On his ring finger, a pale band of skin marked where a wedding band once lived a scar of time itself. She swallowed, her voice raw. "Did you used to wear a ring?" Liam paused, eyelids flickering as though holding back a tide. He twisted that finger slowly, a faint, almost broken smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, I still wear it in my mind." The words were steady, but Aurora saw the tendons tighten, veins swelling as if something inside him was about to burst. Not all storms live in the sky. Some rage quietly behind the ribs. She drew a breath. "Tell me, if you want to." For a moment, Liam just listened to the rain, hammering the tin roof like an old tape playing on repeat. Then he spoke, his voice, low, deliberate, each word forcing its way through rubble. It was winter. The phone rang. Sarah said she smelled smoke. She grabbed Emma and tried the stairs. I was already on my way. By the time I got there, the 3rd floor had collapsed. His eyes fixed on the darkness in front of him, as if he could still see the burning building rising out of the night. His breath hitched. I ran in. Smoke was everywhere, red flames closing in. The radio in my ear kept screaming, "Get out, get out!" I didn't. I screamed her name until my voice broke. My crew dragged me out, said the ceiling was going to fall. I still tried to go back. His hand, the one with the ghost of a ring, trembled. Aurora leaned forward, her eyes glassy, and Emma Liam swallowed hard. They found her. She was breathing. Sarah wasn't. Doctor said it was quick smoke in her lungs, but there was nothing peaceful about it inside my chest. The cold light hit his face, carving deep shadows into the grief etched between his brows. Aurora hesitated, then reached across and placed her hand lightly over his. Warmth, fragile, defiant, rested against that pale ring mark, like a thin bandage on an old wound. "You've saved so many lives," she whispered, But tonight, you saved mine." Their eyes met across the weak fluorescent glow. His grief and her despair collided like two rivers flowing in opposite directions, and in the middle lay a sleeping child, steady breaths rising beneath the borrowed coat. Here, in a damp shelter, where money and privilege meant nothing, it was the warmth of human hearts that kept life from slipping away. Wind seeped through the cracks of the shelter, cold and unforgiving. Aurora tugged his jacket tighter, but the chill inside her chest was harsher still. She glanced at Liam so close she could have reached him, yet his eyes seemed miles away, locked on a night she could never touch. "There are smells you never forget," he murmured, voice breaking into the rhythm of the rain. "Burning plastic fabric wood. When they crawl into your lungs, they don't leave. I still hear Sarah calling my name. I still see her hair in the smoke then gone." Aurora's throat tightened. All her life, she had known the perfume of expensive boutiques, the polished cedar of penthouses, the swirl of wine her father sipped at dinners. But ash she could not imagine. Liam closed his eyes, his breath shaking. "After that night, I wasn't a firefighter anymore. I turned in my badge, left the brothers I called family. Because what good was I? If I couldn't save the one that mattered most, I carried Emma in my arms, barely months old, and I had no idea where to begin." He looked down at the child now curled beneath his coat, lashes fluttering as she dreamed. His voice cracked. "Some nights, I'd just sit and watch her breathe for hours. If she was quiet too long, panic would claw at me. I thought, maybe I wasn't fit to be her father. Maybe she'd be better off without me." Aurora's vision blurred. She gripped the hem of his sleeve, her voice breaking. "You lost everything and still stood up. And me, all I've ever done is run. I'm a coward." Liam shook his head gently, though shadows still weighed in his eyes. "No, I'm not strong. I just knew. If I let go, Emma lost too. Same as when I saw you on that railing tonight. I saw myself, the man who once almost gave up, and I couldn't let it happen again." Aurora broke into sobs rain and tears running together down her pale face. Yet her hand clung to his, refusing to let go. In that fragile shelter, all the walls of wealth and glass towers vanished, leaving behind two people bound by the same wound loss. The rain softened on the roof, still cold but less cruel. Emma stirred her tiny lips, parting with a sleepy mama. The sound fell into Aurora's chest like a drop of fire. Her hand trembled as she brushed the child's damp hair, tears spilling warm against her cheeks. "I don't want to die," she whispered. "I just don't know how to live when everyone wants me to be someone else." Liam laid his scarred hand gently against the little palm-shaped pendant around her neck, a silver charm shaped like a paintbrush. "Then we start with breathing," he said softly. "Here, there's no balance sheet. Just a warm coat, a dreaming child, and a man who will sit beside you until you find your window again." Aurora bowed her forehead against his hand, shoulders trembling. For the first time in years, she didn't feel displayed, she felt seen. Later, at a small brick house down the block, an older man named Joe opened his wooden door. He asked nothing, only nodded and welcomed them inside. The kitchen was warm with the scent of herbal tea. Emma curled on an old sofa blanket tucked around her. Aurora sat close, her hand resting over the child's small fingers. Watching her breathe so peaceful calmed something deep within her. Joe set down tea and left them alone. Steam fogged the rim of Liam's cup as his voice dropped to a rasp. They call it survivor's guilt. After the fire, I lay in that hospital bed for weeks. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Sarah's voice, and I asked myself, why am I still here when she's not? Aurora studied him in the lamp's warm glow. His face was rough-lined with hardship, but his eyes, those dark, steady eyes, were oceans of quiet sorrow. I condemned myself, he whispered. Told myself I wasn't fit to be a father. Some nights, I nearly left Emma at an orphanage door. I stood there for hours, but when she cried, I knew I couldn't let her go. Aurora's tears slipped freely. Here was a man the world might call strong, yet inside was a soul fractured and raw. You carry guilt for surviving, she whispered. And I carry guilt for wanting to end my life when I already had everything. Their eyes locked. Two lives from opposite worlds, one man poor, but clinging to life, one woman rich, but ready to let go. The invisible distance between them shrank. Aurora pulled a small pencil from her ruined gown, the only thing she had smuggled from her world. On Joe's notepad, she sketched with shaking lines Emma's face as she slept, lips-pursed lashes resting like feathers. I haven't dared to draw for months, she murmured. But tonight, I need to. Because this, the breath of a child, is the only answer that makes sense. When she finished, she turned the page toward him. Liam didn't touch it right away. He stared afraid a blink might erase it. Finally, he let his scarred finger trace the lines. Sarah always wanted a drawing of Emma, he said hoarsely. I promised her once, then forgot how to remember. Thank you for reminding me. Aurora's necklace clinked lightly against the paper, sealing the moment like punctuation. She glanced at his hands, strong from labor, yet capable of holding a life without demanding anything in return. Do you think ashes can bloom into flowers? She whispered. Yes, Liam said quietly, if someone stays long enough to water them. Her throat tightened. Joe passed by, silently setting down 2 chipped mugs of steaming tea as though blessing something unnamed. Aurora's phone buzzed in her dress pocket. On the screen, Harold Whitmore. She flipped it face down beside the drawing. The Whitmore Empire Glass Towers merger's million-dollar handshakes was nothing here. Emma stirred half awake, reaching out to touch Aurora's cheek. The child's instinctive gesture pierced through the frost around her heart. Aurora caught the tiny hand, pressed it against her skin, and closed her eyes. Tears slipped down, warm, not cold. From his pocket, Liam drew out a small tin box. Inside lay his tarnished wedding band. He set it beside the drawing, not as goodbye, but as a gentle folding of the past. I'll never forget Sarah, he whispered. But if tomorrow begins, I want it to begin with gratitude. Because tonight, we're still breathing. Aurora looked at the ring, the drawing, the child smiling in sleep, then at the man before her. She nodded like an anchor, settling into place. Tomorrow, she whispered, if you'll let me, I'll make the tea. And maybe I'll draw again. This time with you in the picture. Outside, the rain had stopped. Streetlights scattered into golden shards across the puddles like fallen petals. Inside that cramped kitchen, a sketch dried beside a silver ring. 2 witnesses of loss and of choice. Together, they sat quietly, letting the steam of herbal tea rise between them, while a fragile dawn pressed its light into the smallest cracks of their hearts. From the edge of ashes, a green shoot had begun to grow. And at the edge of two worlds, poverty and privilege, a home was waiting to be built. Part 3. The pain of being forced. The old bus stop sat quiet beneath the thinning rain. Cold drafts crept through the cracks, seeping into Aurora's soaked gown. She huddled deeper inside Liam's oversized jacket arms, wrapped around her shoulders, as if clinging to the last flicker of warmth. Liam sat across from her, Emma curled up between them, the steady rhythm of her child's breathing filling the heavy silence like a lullaby. Aurora stared at the puddled ground, her voice barely audible. "Do you know who my father is?" Liam shook his head. He didn't need the name. All that mattered was the storm of pain in her eyes. "Harold Whitmore," she whispered, "CEO of Whitmore Holdings, the so-called king of real estate." One nod, one shake of his head marked its tremble. Her lips twisted into a bitter smile, though her eyes were swollen red. "Everyone calls me lucky, born into silk, draped in couture, a penthouse overlooking the Hudson. But no one knows what it feels like to be traded like a commodity. My father promised me to his partner's son. A marriage with no love, only stock and leverage." Liam's jaw tightened, his hand clenched against his knee, but he held his silence, letting her speak. Aurora's voice cracked. "I was 19. Derek was 24. I'd never even chosen my own dress, let alone my own life. When my father told me, he didn't ask what I wanted. He only said, 'This is the only way to protect the empire.' I stayed silent, and silence counted as consent." Her nails dug into her palms. A tear slipped down and vanished into the wet concrete floor. The picture was piercing a girl with a billionaire's last name, trembling in a shabby bus stop, weeping for a future that had never been hers. Liam looked at Emma, then back at Aurora. His voice was steady, warm but firm. "No one has the right to sign your life for you. Not a father. Not a CEO." The words cracked her composure. Aurora broke into sobs, her small shoulders trembling. Under the flickering fluorescent light, privilege was stripped bare, revealed for what it had been all along velvet chains. Her gaze dropped to her rain-soaked shoes. The bulb overhead hissed and buzzed its pale glow, etching her face into something fragile, weary. "When my mother was alive," she whispered, "the penthouse felt like it had real windows. She'd pull the curtains back, let the river breeze in. She bought me cheap paints from a corner shop, told me, 'Aurora, don't forget the world is bigger than this room. You can choose.'" A faint smile flickered across her lips, gone as quickly as it came. Then one afternoon, the police called. A car wreck. Totaled. She was gone. I was 16. Her voice fractured. Liam's chest tightened, his hands balling into fists. Emma stirred in her sleep, as though her tiny body echoed the sorrow around her. Aurora's tears ran freely. From that day on, the penthouse became a mausoleum. Curtains stayed closed. My father buried himself in deals and left me to assistants and schedules. 25 floors above Manhattan, and not a single corner I could call mine. She touched the silver paintbrush pendant at her chest. I hid sketch paper under my bed. At night, I'd sneak a lamp and draw. Until the night he caught me. He ripped the paper out of my hands, crumpled it, threw it into the fireplace, the same fireplace my mother once used to keep me warm. That's when I learned to start hiding. Myself. Liam's throat clenched. The world might see a dazzling heiress, but in front of him was a caged child. "Your mother gave you a window," he said, voice hoarse but steady. "No one can lock it forever. No one can burn away the colors inside your soul." Aurora sobbed harder, tears dripping onto her pendant like watercolors running wild. For the first time in years, someone saw her not as an asset, not as a Whitmore, but as a heart aching to be heard. The rain had stopped. Droplets dripped rhythmically from the roof into puddles below. Aurora hugged her knees, leaning back against the glass wall of the bus stop. Outside, the streetlight stretched her shadow long and thin, like a prisoner's silhouette, pulled taut by invisible chains. "Derek," she whispered, her words cutting like shards. "My father's partner's son. They say he's brilliant, Harvard-trained, running $100 million funds. But the first thing he ever said to me was, 'We'll be the most powerful merger in New York.'" She let out a hollow laugh, tears streaking her cheeks. "Not 'I love you.' Not even 'What do you dream of?' Just a deal." Her voice trembled with urgency. "I told my father, I can't. I'm too young. I want to choose." He looked at me like I was a displeased shareholder. He said, "Step out that door and you lose everything. Your name, your protection, your inheritance. You won't be a Whitmore anymore." Her voice dropped to a whisper. I was 19. I'd never signed anything in my life except birthday cards. And suddenly I was staring at a marriage contract numbers and shares listed like I was a line item. And he demanded my signature. No one asked if I wanted to. Silence thickened. Emma stirred her small hand, brushing the edge of Liam's coat as though nudging him to speak. Liam drew a deep breath. His chest rose and fell. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried a weight that matched hers. "Your father can buy skyscrapers, but he can't buy a heart. That's the one thing no contract can touch." Aurora lifted her gaze, her tear-streaked face searching his. The words broke something in her, the first crack of light in walls built too high. Her voice grew smaller, raw. "The engagement party. He rented an entire Manhattan ballroom. Hundreds of chandeliers, champagne flowing, my gown flown in from Paris. Everyone clapped. Everyone smiled. Everyone but me. Her fists clenched in her lap, knuckles white. I had to stand beside Derek, smile, as if I belonged there. Cameras flashed. Guests whispered, 'She's the perfect heiress.' But in the mirror, I saw a stranger, a girl with painted lips and pleading eyes begging someone to notice. Her voice broke further. When the music started, Derek took my hand and whispered, 'From now on, you're my asset.' I wanted to scream, to run. But the room was full of billion-dollar suits and couture gowns, handshakes worth empires. I was a bird in a glass cage displayed for their applause. Tears dripped onto her gown, staining it darker. I scanned the crowd, praying someone, anyone would tell me I could say no. No one did. My father raised his glass, smiling at his partner, never once meeting my eyes. Her shoulders shook violently. Her voice collapsed into a whisper. In that moment, I knew if I didn't run, I would die, even if my body kept breathing. The air grew heavy. Liam leaned forward, his rough hand covering hers. He didn't say, "You're strong." He didn't say, "You'll be fine." He simply said, voice low and unwavering, "Aurora, no one was born to be a transaction. If that whole room refused to see you, then let me see you." Aurora turned to him, her tear-swollen eyes locking onto his. For a heartbeat, the city fell away. There was only this, the fragile truth of being witnessed. Her voice shook, but something in her gaze shone as if clawing toward freedom. After that night, I couldn't breathe. My gown, still perfect, my lipstick untouched, but inside, I was dying. I left everything. The heels, the purse, even the Whitmore name. I ran into the storm. Her memory unfolded in jagged flashes, the marble staircase blurring beneath her, the revolving doors spinning, cold wind striking her bare face, rain pouring down in sheets. I ran barefoot through Manhattan streets. The gown dragged through mud, my feet cut on glass and stone. Car horns blared, lights smeared into streaks. I didn't stop. I just needed distance from that ballroom, from that name. Her hands trembled as her nails bit into her palms. I had nowhere to go. No real friends. No one to call. I just kept walking until I saw the Brooklyn Bridge. And there in the storm, I remembered my mother's words. Between two places, you'll know which one is home. I looked around, and none of it felt like mine. So I climbed the railing. Liam's breath caught. He saw again what he'd witnessed hours before: white gown, tangled hair, bare feet slipping toward the abyss. Aurora's voice dropped raw, trembling. I didn't truly want to die. I just wanted someone to hold me back, but to the world I was just a Whitmore. Nobody knew me. Her gaze rose, locking on his in the dim glow of the streetlight. And then you came, with a child in your arms. And in the storm, you shouted, "Don't jump." You didn't know me, but you still ran. Her voice broke, sobs spilling out. She leaned against his shoulder, her tears soaking into his jacket. His rough, scarred hand tightened gently on her arm, not as a claim, not as a chain, but as a vow I will not let go. In a shabby bus stop, with the city lights flickering in the distance, the heiress of a billionaire empire finally allowed herself to be small, fragile, and heard. Part 4. A small gesture. Joe's brownstone sat quietly in an old neighborhood, its mossy awning and weathered wooden door telling stories of years gone by. Liam knocked softly. When the door creaked open, the scent of aged wood, mixed with herbal tea, drifted out, washing away the chill, clinging to their skin. Joe, his silver hair untamed, his eyes seasoned by too many night shifts, as a paramedic took one look at the soaked trio on his doorstep and simply nodded. "Come in." No explanation needed. Aurora stepped inside, her muddy shoes leaving marks on the worn wooden floor. Joe didn't flinch. Liam placed Emma, still wrapped in his jacket, on the threadbare sofa. The little living room was simple. A low bookshelf, a faded rug, a square table scarred by cigarette burns. But its plainness carried something Aurora had never known: peace. No flashing cameras, no suffocating chandeliers, no curated perfection. Just warmth. Joe disappeared into the kitchen. Liam sat down, heavy shoes thudding against the floor. Exhaustion etched on his face, but his eyes never left Emma. Aurora gently pulled a wool blanket from the armrest and tucked it around the child. She leaned close, watching damp curls cling to Emma's rosy cheeks, her small breaths soft and even. Without realizing it, Aurora smiled, the first real smile in months. Emma stirred, blinking up at the unfamiliar face hovering near. Her tiny hands reached her drowsy voice, a whisper. "Are you cold?" Aurora froze, eyes shimmering. Before she could respond, the toddler fumbled under her blanket and pulled out the little knit scarf wrapped around herself. She shoved it into Aurora's hands. "This one's warm. You use it." Aurora stared at the tiny scarf, Emma's only shield against the chill now offered to her, without hesitation. A tear fell onto the child's hand, dissolving like salt in rainwater. Clutching the scarf to her chest, Aurora whispered, broken and trembling, "Thank you, sweetheart. No one's ever done that for me." Liam's throat tightened as he watched. In that single, unguarded moment, a billionaire's daughter, who hours ago nearly surrendered to the storm, was anchored back to life by the kindness of a 2-year-old. In the kitchen, Joe busied himself quietly. Liam followed, reaching for the old dented kettle his movements practiced. Years of single fatherhood had taught him survival warmth, over elegance, presence over presentation. He found an old tin of herbal tea, shook it lightly, chamomile drifting faint in the air. Back in the living room, Aurora still clutched Emma's scarf, her eyes following Liam's silhouette through the doorway. The scent of brewing tea began to spread, mingling with the gentle hiss of the gas flame. It softened her chest like air after years of suffocating in glass towers and boardrooms. For the first time in forever, she inhaled something that felt like peace. A few minutes later, Liam returned, carrying a wooden tray. 2 mismatched mugs, one chipped, one faded, steamed with rising warmth. He set the tray down carefully, his voice low, almost apologetic. "It isn't much, just tea, but it's warm." Aurora lifted the mug with trembling hands. She took the smallest sip. Heat slipped down her throat, spreading through her chest until her eyes blurred with sudden tears. She turned away, but her voice quivered into the open air. "This is the best thing I've ever tasted." Liam blinked, startled. He had never expected a woman raised on Michelin star menus to speak with such sincerity over an old chipped mug. He lowered his gaze, murmuring, maybe because it wasn't brewed from a recipe, but from hands that still wanted to hold on to something. Aurora's eyes lifted, meeting his. Her gaze, still swollen from tears, locked with his steady blue. And for the first time, broken souls found warmth not in wealth, but in presence. Emma stirred again, sat up groggily, then toddled across the couch beside Aurora. The child pretended to sip her own empty cup, giggling her laughter, brightening the room as though shadows had never existed. For Aurora, the moment shimmered like a memory. She had been starved of a family. Not a family bound by diamonds or contracts, but by warmth, by tea, by touch, by quiet belonging. The table lamp spread a gentle glow. Aurora cupped the mug in both hands, as if afraid the warmth would slip away. Her shoulders no longer shook, though her eyes were still rimmed with red. Emma crawled to the old toy chest Joe had kept in a corner, pulling out a frayed doll with golden hair, one eye missing. She toddled back, holding it up to Aurora with glee. "Like you, pretty Lady Aurora," froze. The words, "pretty lady," so simple, so innocent, struck her chest like a bell. For years, she had only been called Heiress Whitmore, the CEO's daughter. Never just pretty. Never just a woman allowed to be seen for who she was. Her hands trembled as she clutched the doll. Tears poured down her face in jagged sobs. No one's ever called me that." Liam startled, watching Aurora unravel over his daughter's innocent words. He dropped to one knee beside her, his rough hand brushing her shoulder. His voice broke raw and certain. "Aurora, you are a pretty lady, not because of Whitmore, not because of gowns or titles, but because you're you." Her tearful gaze lifted into his eyes, meeting a man who had walked through fire and loss, yet spoke with a truth unshaken. She wept into his chest, as Emma sat beside them, hugging the tattered doll, smiling with the pure joy of a child too small to understand, but wise enough to heal. In that small living room, Aurora was finally seen. Not as an heiress, not as a pawn, but as a human being. Later, Emma drifted back to sleep, curled around the doll, her little breaths steady. Aurora sat still, stroking the child's damp curls. Liam's chest tightened at the sight. Words long buried surfaced in a hushed, trembling voice. There are nights when I just watch her breathe. I lay my hand on her chest, counting every rise and fall. Because I'm terrified. If I close my eyes, I'll lose her too, the way I lost Sarah. His hands shook faintly against the table, his eyes fixed into the dark, as if smoke and fire still lingered there. Emma's breaths are the only thread tying me to this world. When I think I have no reason left, she becomes the reason. Aurora clutched the doll tighter. His words echoed through her chest like a hymn of grief and love, something her father had never given her. She whispered, broken, "My father never did that. He signed contracts, closed deals, built towers. But he never once looked at me just to make sure I was breathing." Tears fell heavy onto her dress. Liam reached, laying his scarred hand gently over hers. A brief touch, but it carried the weight of presence she had longed for her entire life. Aurora lowered her forehead onto the table, sobbing without masks, without walls. Liam didn't offer hollow comfort. He simply stayed, his hand still there, a quiet fire in the cold. The kitchen filled with the ticking of a clock, Emma's gentle breaths, and the silent communion of two wounded souls, one anchored by a child, the other saved by being seen. The lamp glowed gold over chipped mugs, half-finished tea, and tears drying into quiet. Emma dreamed on lips curved in a soft smile, as though she too knew a secret of healing. Aurora touched the little scarf Emma had given her, holding it like treasure. Around her was no penthouse, no diamonds, no boardroom. Just an old table, faded walls, and the rarest luxury she had ever known presence. Her voice broke into the hush, a whisper like fragile glass. "Maybe this is home." Liam looked up, eyes catching hers. He said nothing. Instead, he rose, poured more tea into her mug. Steam curled gently upward, an unspoken vow. "I'll keep pouring warmth when you need it." Aurora stared at the rising steam, her hands gripping the mug tight. Tears slipped again, but they were softer now. Tears that came when wounds first began to close. A billionaire's daughter, once destined for glass cages, and empty applause, now found home in a single dad's kitchen beside a sleeping child and an old scarf. Outside, the rain had stopped. A pale glow spread across the sky. And in that little house, three souls sat close breathing in the sacred quiet of hope just beginning to grow. Part 5. Vanishing into the night fell, and Joe's little brownstone sank into rare silence. Emma lay curled beneath her blanket lips, pursed as if she were sucking on some sweet dream. Liam slumped in an old wooden chair, his head resting against the arm, drifting in and out of restless dozing. Aurora alone remained awake. She stood by the small window, watching the street lamp scatter pale light over the rain-soaked sidewalk. Beyond New York sprawled like a restless beast that never stopped breathing. In the misted glass, her reflection stared back at her red-rimmed eyes, tangled hair, Liam's oversized jacket draped loosely around her thin frame. And deep inside, Aurora knew this fragile piece was never meant to belong to her. Her gaze fell to the table where her sketch of Emma still rested. The lines were shaky, uneven, but alive. Her hand trembled as she touched it. In her head, her father's voice echoed once more. "You're not an artist. You're a Whitmore. You don't get to choose." Her chest tightened. She could not drag Liam and Emma into the Whitmore orbit. Her father would never forgive her running, and the fragile warmth born tonight could be crushed the moment his shadow found them. Aurora sat, pulled a sheet of Joe's stationery toward her, and began to write. The pen shook in her grip, each word like a tear. "Liam, thank you for not letting go. Tonight, you gave me the feeling of being alive for the first time in years. But I cannot stay. Danger follows me, and I will not let your daughter suffer because of me. Please don't look for me. Believe this, you and Emma deserve the light, even if I must step back into the dark. Aurora." She folded the note, left it beneath the sketch, pressed a kiss against Emma's damp curls, and turned toward the door. Her hand quivered as she opened it, the hinges whispering a farewell into the night. One last look, Liam asleep in the chair, Emma breathing softly. A small family, the kind she had longed to belong to. And then she stepped out, letting her silhouette dissolve into the rain-washed dark of the city. Morning came with a thin aroma of Joe's coffee. Liam jerked awake back, aching from his awkward sleep. He scanned the room. Aurora was gone. His chest sank, though part of him had already known. His eyes landed on the table, the folded note beneath Emma's drawing. He picked it up. Her handwriting, soft, rushed bled across the page. As he read, his hand trembled until his knuckles went white. Emma toddled over, rubbing her eyes. "Where's Miss Aurora, Daddy?" Liam's throat closed. He wanted to promise she'd return, but the words lodged like stones. He bent down, gathering his daughter into his arms, clutching her as if she were all he had left. His voice was a broken whisper. "She's gone, sweetheart." Emma blinked, puzzled, then placed her worn doll into his hands. "Daddy, keep it for her, so when she comes back." Liam held the doll, a tear slipping down onto Emma's hair. The ache was not loud, not raging, but hollow, like a room where the light had just gone out. For a long while he sat at the wooden table, Aurora's note open before him. A few letters were smudged by rain, or perhaps by her tears. He read the same line again and again until it carved itself into him. "You and Emma deserve the light." With shaking hands, he placed the letter into the old tin box where Sarah's wedding band still rested. Another relic, another wound folded into memory. Joe emerged quietly from the kitchen. His old hands pressed Liam's shoulder. No words, just a squeeze heavy with understanding. Liam drew a shuddering breath, pulling Emma close as she hugged the broken doll. He whispered fiercely into her hair, "We still have each other, and Daddy will never let you go. Never." Emma stirred, mumbling sleepily. Then, "Miss Aurora won't let go either." The question pierced him. He bit down, lips pressed tight before stroking her hair. "She needs to find her own way, love. Maybe, someday." It wasn't truth. It wasn't a lie. It was hope, thin, fragile, yet the only rope left to cling to. The days that followed dragged Liam back into survival. Before dawn, he pulled on his work boots, took shifts hauling bricks and steel. His back burned beneath the cold wind, his hands split and bloodied against the iron, but he endured because of Emma. At dusk, he picked her up from Joe's, carrying her down neon-lit streets. She sang nursery rhymes in her small, sweet voice while he swallowed his fatigue and emptiness. At night, in their crumbling apartment with peeling walls, he laid her to bed and opened the tin box. The tarnished ring, the folded letter, two relics of two women, one lost to fire, one vanished into rain. His eyes blurred as he traced the paper. He remembered Aurora's broken sobs, her desperate hope, her hand clinging to his. Now, only ink and silence. Emma murmured in her sleep lips, shaping two small words. Pretty lady. Tears streaked Liam's cheeks. He pressed the letter back into the box, shut the lid. His chest ached with the weight of memory, yet his voice whispered into the dark Aurora. I don't blame you. I only pray that when you find the light, you'll remember we're still here. In the dim glow from the street outside, Liam's shadow stretched long across the cracked wall. A man alone with his daughter, clutching small dreams and a letter left behind in the night. Part 6. A fated reunion. That February morning was bitter cold. Wind sliced through the skeletal beams of a half-finished high-rise in downtown Brooklyn. Liam's gloved hands tightened around a rusted bolt on the scaffolding's second tier. His body ached from too many sleepless nights, but his eyes held steady. Emma needed food. Emma needed shelter. Stopping was not an option. Then a sharp crack split the air. The bolt snapped. The scaffolding shuddered. Before Liam could react, steel gave way beneath him. In that suspended instant, one image tore through his mind, Emma's little face. Then his body plummeted, colliding with the frozen ground. Darkness swallowed him whole. When he woke, it was to a blinding white ceiling and the sterile hum of fluorescent lights. Every breath stabbed ribs, crushed wrist bound in plaster head pounding. The steady beep of the monitor was the only sound anchoring him. He tried to sit, pain ripping through him, sweat breaking cold across his skin. His voice broke into panic. Emma! Where's my daughter? A nurse reassured him. Joe had her. She was safe. Relief stung like fire, but helplessness slammed into his chest. The man who had once run into burning buildings now lay trapped, unable to lift more than his own breath. And then, footsteps. Soft, measured drawing closer. Liam's heartbeat stuttered. He turned his head, and there she was. Aurora. A cream-colored coat draped around her. Golden hair falling loose. Eyes wet but fierce, as if holding both apology and fire. In her trembling hands, a bouquet of pale blue hydrangeas. The room froze. Even the machine seemed to hush. Liam's voice cracked as though it had traveled miles. Aurora. Is it really you? She stepped inside heels, tapping softly against the tile. Her tears fell at the sight of him, trying to rise, teeth clenched against the pain. She set the flowers on the table, drew the chair close. Don't, she whispered. Don't move. I'm sorry for leaving. I needed time. But when I read about the accident, I couldn't stay away. Liam stared at her, his chest torn between joy, fury, longing. His words came rough frayed. I thought I'd never see you again. Aurora bowed her head, fingers trembling as they wrapped around his bandaged hand. My full name is Aurora Whitmore, daughter of Harold Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Holdings. The name hit like iron. Liam's breath faltered. Whitmore, the name on skyscrapers, on finance headlines, on every glowing ticker board. And this fragile girl he had once pulled from a storm, she was heir to a billion-dollar throne. Aurora held his gaze, her voice breaking. But sure, I know it shocks you. But I don't want to hide anymore. That night on the bridge, You didn't save an heiress. You saved a human being. And tonight, I want you to know, no matter what my father calls me, you gave me my real name, Aurora. Tears welled in Liam's eyes, not just from the pain in his body, but from the truth of her return. Not a goodbye this time, but the raw honesty she had once been denied. Days blurred. Aurora barely left his side. She brought fruit little meals, even a hidden jar of watercolor paints she had smuggled with her. Slowly, the sterile room softened. Hydrangeas brightened the plastic vase. Scribbled sketches dotted the walls. When Emma arrived with Joe, her small feet pattering across the floor, her eyes lit up at Aurora. She squealed, barreling into her arms like a child finding someone she'd lost long ago. Aurora bent to gather her, inhaling the mingled scent of baby shampoo and herbal tea. Her lips brushed Emma's curls, her eyes burning with tears. One afternoon, Liam leaned back against his pillows, bandages stiff around his ribs, while Aurora read aloud from Emma's favorite storybook. Her voice faltered at first, but softened into melody. Emma sat between them, scribbling with colored pencils on a scrap of paper. When she held it up, Aurora asked gently, "And who's this?" Emma beamed. "This is Daddy. And this is me. And this—" She paused, drawing a golden circle of hair. "This is Mommy." The room stilled. Aurora froze, tears welling, as she stared at the page. Liam's breath caught. Emma looked up innocently. "Right, Daddy. Miss Aurora's my mommy now, isn't she?" Aurora broke. She clutched Emma to her chest, sobbing as hot tears splashed the childish drawing, blurring its colors. For the first time in her life, she was called something no inheritance, no contract had ever offered her mother. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep in Joe's arms, Aurora remained by Liam's bed. The dim hospital lamp traced every scar and bruise on his face. She reached out, brushing a stray lock from his forehead, her voice trembling. "Liam, I've never felt like I belonged anywhere. But when Emma called me Mommy, it felt like the world finally gave me back a place." His gaze softened, deep and steady. "Aurora, there are promises that don't need contracts or signatures. A look and embrace. Sometimes that's enough to bind a life." She collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest. His ribs ached with every breath, but still his arms circled her, holding on. Between ragged gasps, she whispered, "If my father comes for us, will you still be here?" He drew her closer, voice low but unyielding. "I once pulled you back from the edge. If the world tries to drag you under again, I won't let go." Aurora wept, but this time her tears carried trust. For the first time, she believed that love could stand without permission, without legacy, without contracts, just two hearts choosing to stay. When the doctor finally allowed Liam outside for an hour, Aurora guided him to the hospital's small garden. Bare winter trees stretched toward a pale February sky, but spring sunlight flickered timidly through the branches. Emma ran in circles, laughing as she gathered fallen leaves. Liam leaned on crutches, Aurora steady at his side, her hand never leaving his arm. They had just lowered themselves onto a wooden bench when a sudden staccato burst split the air. The violent flare of flashbulbs. Paparazzi swarmed the gate. Shouts rattled the garden. "Aurora Whitmore, are you living with this man? Liam Carter, are you exploiting the Whitmore heiress? Is this your rebellion against your father's empire?" Emma screamed, frightened, bursting into sobs. Liam shifted to shield her, while Aurora rose, pale but fierce, gripping Liam's hand. "I won't let them destroy you." Or her. The very next day, Aurora stood before a wall of cameras in the hospital lobby. No couture gown, no diamonds. Just a plain white blouse, hair tied back, her face bare. Dozens of microphones thrust forward. She inhaled deeply, then spoke with trembling clarity. "My name is Aurora Whitmore, daughter of Harold Whitmore. But as of today, I am no longer an heiress. I renounce every claim, every inheritance, every title that was forced upon me. I choose my own life. And that life is with Liam Carter and his little girl." Gasps rippled. Shutters clicked in a frenzy. Aurora stood, straight eyes glistening yet blazing. "I know I will pay a price. I know my father will never forgive me. But at least for the first time, I am deciding for myself, and I accept it." At the back of the room, Liam cradled Emma, his eyes wet. He understood what Aurora had just severed wealth, safety, the entire fortress of her past. But her gaze sought only him and the child in his arms, a vow written in light. In that instant, Liam realized the night on Brooklyn Bridge had become destiny fulfilled. Aurora was no longer the girl who nearly let go. She was the woman who chose to hold on to freedom, to love to them. Part 7. A Dreamed of Family. That night, the little Brooklyn apartment seemed to glow brighter than usual. Liam came home from the market carrying a paper bag filled with simple things: bread, eggs, a small head of broccoli. Aurora reached for it with a soft smile, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. High heels and glittering gowns were part of another life now. Tonight, she wore a plain white t-shirt, faded jeans, her golden hair tied back in a loose knot. Emma scampered in circles around the kitchen, chanting "dinner, dinner." Aurora laughed, settling at the table to crack eggs with her. The child's tiny fingers fumbled, scattering bits of shell. But Aurora gently picked them out one by one, never frowning. Liam leaned against the doorway, watching them, his two girls, and felt something stir inside him, something almost foreign peace. When dinner was set, just scrambled eggs, boiled broccoli, and toasted bread. The yellow lamp above the table made it glow like a banquet. Emma clasped her hands as if in a cartoon and declared with delight, "It's perfect, Mommy." The room froze. Aurora's spoon clattered against her plate. She stared at Emma, at those wide, shining eyes, and felt something deep inside her break open. She pulled the little girl into her arms, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her voice shook as she whispered, What did you call me?" Emma blinked, innocent, certain. "Mommy." Aurora's arms trembled as she clutched her close. In that instant, every chandelier, every ballroom, every dollar her father wielded meant nothing. She had just been given what he could never buy her, what no 1,000 guests could deliver, the gift of being a mother. That night, Emma slept in Aurora's embrace, tiny fingers still tangled in her golden hair. Aurora lay on her side, watching her pink cheeks rise and fall with each breath. Silent tears streamed down, but a smile curved her lips. Liam came in with a thin blanket. He spread it gently over both of them, then lowered himself into the chair beside the bed. The lamp lit his weary face, carved by hardship, yet his eyes carried a light he hadn't known in years. Aurora whispered, so only he could hear Liam. "No one's ever called me something that shook my heart like that. I've been heiress, CEO's daughter, family asset, but never mommy. Tonight, I was called by the truest name of my life. Liam's throat tightened. He reached out, brushing her shoulder, his voice husky. Aurora, she looks at you the way I once looked at Sarah. Not out of duty, but as a gift. And if you want it, I'll let Emma keep calling you that. Because to me, you're already part of this family. Aurora bent her face into Emma's hair, weeping quietly. And in that cramped little room, without palaces or diamonds, there was enough: a narrow bed, a child asleep, and two broken hearts that had finally found a reason to beat together. Morning sunlight seeped through the cracked blinds, laying golden patterns across the worn floor. Aurora rose early, tying back her hair, rolling up her sleeves to tidy the small apartment. She had once had maids, once lived in a penthouse, spanning an entire floor of glass and marble. Yet here, folding blankets and wiping a second-hand table with her own hands, she felt something lighter than air. Emma sprawled on the floor, with stubby crayons drawing on scrap paper. Aurora knelt beside her, letting the colors stain her hands, sketching a dream house, a red roof, 3 figures in the yard, one tall one with golden hair, one little girl smiling wide. Emma squealed, "That's us, Daddy, Mommy, and me." Aurora's hand trembled, but this time, no tears fell. She smiled, nodding gently. "Yes, that's us." From the doorway, Liam watched in silence. His shabby apartment had never echoed with such laughter. The stained walls, the worn rug, all had become the backdrop to a dream far richer than any he'd ever dared to picture. Aurora hugged Emma close, kissed her soft curls, and in her eyes flickered something new: pride. Not the pride of Whitmore wealth, but the pride of being loved enough to be called Mom. That evening, Emma drifted to sleep after Aurora spun her a bedtime story of a princess who left her castle behind to live in a tiny cottage where she was finally loved. In the kitchen, Liam washed dishes at the sink. His sleeves rolled bandages still wrapped around his healing wrist. Aurora stepped in, plucked a plate from his hands. "Let me." "You're still hurt?" He chuckled softly. "I'm used to it. You don't have to." She cut him off, turning to face him, eyes shining. "Liam, I want to. Not because I must, but because I want to stay. I want to do the things a person does when she belongs." Liam froze. The walls he'd sealed with resignation cracked at her words. He reached for her damp hand, clasping it tight. "Aurora, are you sure this path? It won't be easy." She looked deep into his eyes, voice shaking but firm. "I've never been more sure in my life." Their wet hands clung together over the sink water, dripping soap suds clinging. No diamond rings, no champagne toasts, only chipped plates and cheap detergent. But it was the purest vow either had ever made. The next morning, sunlight slanted through the dusty window onto the tiny stove. Aurora stood nervously at the burner, flipping her very first pancake. Liam sat at the table with Emma on his lap, both cheering her on. "Go, Mommy, go, Aurora," flushed, laughing at the word that still made her heart race. She teased Mommy, "Huh, you sure Mommy's pancake is even edible?" Emma nodded furiously, and Liam burst into laughter. Their joy filled the kitchen, drowning out the honk of traffic outside. They ate together, charred pancakes, clumsy slices of apple-warm milk. Aurora's eyes blurred as she looked at father and daughter across the table. It wasn't a hotel breakfast, but it was the richest meal of her life. Later, Emma napped on the sofa, arms around her battered doll. Aurora tucked her in, pressed a kiss to her forehead. Suddenly in her sleep, the child murmured, "I love you, Mommy." Aurora froze. Tears sprang instantly, her hands trembling as she caressed the girl's face. She turned to Liam, stunned. He only nodded, a quiet smile curving his lips. Aurora sank to the floor, burying her face in the wool blanket, sobbing. Yet these were not tears of despair. They were tears of healing, tears of arrival. For the first time, she believed it. She hadn't just been called a mother. She truly was one. Outside the window, early spring light spilled across Brooklyn's weathered rooftops. Inside the small apartment, a new family had been born, not from fortune, not from legacy, but from the innocent whisper of a child binding three hearts into one. Part 8. The Media Storm. Monday morning in Brooklyn usually woke to car horns and the smell of coffee from the corner cart. But on Liam's block, it was the crack of camera flashes that broke the dawn. Before he could even draw the blinds, Liam heard the restless hum outside, reporters, swarming microphones, thrust upward voices, calling Aurora Whitmore like a flock of wild birds. Emma ran to the window, giggling instinctively until she froze at the sight of dozens of lenses aimed at her. Aurora quickly pulled the child back, pressing her to her chest, her own hands trembling. Liam strode to the door and threw another chain across the lock. The pounding came instantly, heavy as hammers. "Miss Whitmore, are you living with a poor laborer to defy your father? Liam Carter, is it true you have a history of violence? Were you dismissed from the fire department for abandoning your post?" The words cut like thrown knives. Aurora's face went pale. Liam stiffened the phrase. Abandoning your post landed like a blow to the deepest wound, where Sarah's voice still cried out in smoke and fire. Then a black SUV slid into the alley. Two men in gray suits stepped out, faces like stone. The taller one held out a card. Security Division of Whitmore Holdings. "Miss Aurora, you'll come with us immediately. This is a protective order from your family." "Protective or prison?" Liam snapped his hand, whitening on the doorknob. The man didn't look at him. His words were only for Aurora. "Your father worries for your safety. Here is too great a risk." Emma buried her face against Aurora's neck. "Mommy, who are they?" Aurora kissed the child's hair, her throat burning. She lifted her eyes to Liam. In them lived 1,000 unsaid things. "I'll come back," she whispered. I need to put out the fire outside. I'm going with you." Liam answered instantly. "No," the guard cut in. "Only Miss Whitmore." Emma's tiny hand slipped from Aurora's as she stepped toward the SUV. "Mommy." The child's cry tore down the alley. Aurora turned back, pressed her palm to the tinted glass, tears streaming. The car pulled away, swallowing her face into its black window, while Liam stood frozen in the storm of cameras clutching Emma as flashes cracked like lightning over a fragile roof. By noon, the city roared. Tabloids splashed headlines: "Heiress fallen Aurora. Whitmore, living with poor laborer, exploited." A primetime talk show host sneered, "She's playing a dangerous brand game." A nameless blog whispered, "Sources confirm Liam Carter once abandoned his duty as a firefighter." No proof, just words. But words can kill. Liam's phone rang. His foreman's voice was blunt. "Sorry, Carter. Take a few weeks off. Inspectors are coming. We don't want trouble." Another email arrived. Contract suspended. At the bodega downstairs, whispers followed him. "That's him, the guy leeching off the heiress." He sank into a chair. Emma crawled into his lap, holding out her one-eyed doll. "Daddy, you're sad. Is it because I wasn't good?" The question knocked the breath from his lungs. He crushed her against him, burying his face in her soap-scented hair. "No, sweetheart. Never because of you." Across the city, glass walls sealed Aurora inside the Whitmore penthouse. Her phone and laptop were gone. Guards patrolled the hall. Harold Whitmore stood by the window. Manhattan sprawled beneath him like a chessboard. "What have you done to our name?" His voice was steel. "I'll fix this. You'll stay here until it blows over." Aurora lifted her chin, eyes raw but steady. "You can lock a door, Father. You can't lock my choice." "Choice?" He gave a cold laugh. "That man is a failure using you for fame. You're being played." "He carried a child in the storm and still ran to save me," she cried. "And you stand here counting risks." The crystal in his glass clinked sharply against stone. He turned away. "Take her back to her room." The door clicked shut. The electronic lock beeped sterile and final. Aurora slid to the floor, back against the cold wood, whispering into the silence. "Emma, don't be afraid. Mommy's finding her way back." Days later, the Whitmore lawyers appeared on TV. "Our family will pursue legal action to protect Miss Aurora. We believe she has been manipulated by a man with a questionable past." The blow landed. Headlines thundered. "Single dad exploits. Heiress gold digger disguised as hero." Cropped photos of Liam holding Aurora at the hospital doorway were spun as proof of calculated deceit. Social media hissed with venom. "Cinderella sure, but in real life, the prince just wants her money. Poor girl must be brainwashed." In his tiny apartment, Liam sat before his cracked phone screen, reading every line, hands trembling, until his knuckles bled. Joe touched his shoulder quietly. "You don't need to see that. They're saying I left Sarah in the fire. Joe, don't you see? She's gone. And now they've turned it into a weapon against me." Emma, unaware, stacked her toy blocks into a shaky bridge. She beamed up. "Look, Daddy. Mommy a bridge." Liam's breath broke. That word bridge dragged him back to Brooklyn Bridge, to the night he saved Aurora with one hand, while cradling Emma in the other. He kissed his daughter's curls, eyes burning. The world might call him names, but he knew the truth. He would never stop protecting Emma. Or Aurora, if she found her way back. The consequences rolled in fast. Their landlord delivered a notice. "Sorry, Carter. The press is bad for business. You've got 30 days to move." Day work dried up. Employers shook their heads at his name. At the grocery, people whispered, staring, "That's the gold digger." Nights found him by the window, Emma asleep on his lap, the city glittering cruelly beyond the glass. His bandaged hands ached. His chest tightened with helpless fury. Across town, Aurora paced her gilded cage. Guards at the door, blood at her knee from bumping a sharp table corner. She pressed her hand against the glass, whispering, "If I don't break free, Liam and Emma will bleed for me." That night, on the fogged bathroom mirror, she traced 3 words with her fingertip. "I will fight." 3 days later, rain slammed the penthouse windows. Aurora watched the storm, her heart burning. News anchors mocked Liam's name. Headlines cut like blades. She couldn't breathe, knowing each word stabbed him. At 3:12 a.m., the hallways fell quiet. She pulled a hoodie over her hair, slid into sneakers, and slung a small backpack over her shoulders. No diamonds, no contracts, Just a few blank pages and the tin of colored pencils Emma once gave her. Her pulse raced as she slipped through the emergency stairwell. No alarms. She had studied the guards' rotations for days. Rain slicked the metal steps, each stride a heartbeat. She burst into the night, flagged a taxi, whispered to the driver, "Brooklyn. Take me to this address." She leaned against the glass rain, and tears streaking her reflection. Emma's face appeared in her mind, whispering, "I love you, Mommy." Then Liam's eyes steady, even as the world called him a fraud. She prayed, "Please, let me go home." The taxi turned onto the familiar street. The worn steps to the apartment rose before her. Aurora's knuckles trembled as she knocked. Inside, Liam stirred, clutching Emma close. He rose, opened the door. Their eyes met, wet, trembling, burning. Aurora stood there, soaked in breathless fire blazing behind her tears. "If you still want me, I'm here. I choose you. I choose Emma. I choose this love, even if it costs me everything." Liam couldn't speak. His throat closed. Then he pulled the door wide. Aurora rushed in, wrapping herself around him and the child. All three collapsed together as the storm raged outside. Emma blinked awake, murmuring through her drowsy smile, "Mommy," came back. Aurora clung to her, crying so hard, her body shook. "Yes, sweetheart," Mommy came back. The rain hammered the roof, but inside that little apartment, another storm had broken the storm of doubt, of lies, of distance. What remained was warmth. Three hearts bound together again. Yeah, Part 9. The choice of the heart. The knock at the door that rainy night still echoed in Liam's mind like a note from fate. He had opened it to find Aurora soaked to the bone, breathless golden hair plastered against her pale face. The storm pierced like 1,000 needles, yet her eyes shone brighter than any street lamp outside. "If you still need me," her voice trembled, but did not falter. "I'm here. I choose you. I choose Emma. I choose this love, even if it costs me everything." Liam's hand shook on the doorknob. For a heartbeat, the ghost of Sarah brushed across his memory, a loss that never healed. But then Emma stirred, blinking awake in his arms. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and whispered toward Aurora, "Mommy." Came back. Aurora collapsed to her knees, gathering the child into her arms. The warmth of Emma's tiny body rushed through her, burning away fear and doubt. Liam watched his chest breaking open with both ache and sweetness. The woman before him had shattered her chains and stepped trembling but unflinching into his world. In the steady drum of rain against the glass, the three held each other close. No cameras, no headlines, only a father, a child, and a woman who chose to leave a throne behind so she could be a mother and a companion instead. By morning, the apartment still smelled of storm. Aurora sat at the table wearing one of Liam's old shirts, while her own clothes hung drying. She wrote furiously on a sheet of paper, the ink blurred by falling tears. Liam sat across from her, silent, waiting. Finally, Aurora lifted her gaze. Her voice was calm, but firm. "I called my lawyer. I'm signing everything away. The inheritance, the shares, the Whitmore name. No penthouse, no trust fund, no privileges. I won't live as my father's pawn anymore." Liam exhaled, hard eyes tightening with worry. "Aurora, do you understand what that means? No security, no luxury, just this small apartment, my wages that barely stretch, and hardships you've never known." Her grip tightened on the paper, her eyes glowing like fire. "I understand." But Liam living in a golden cage is darker than the smallest Brooklyn room. I choose freedom. I choose Emma. I choose you. For the first time, I feel alive. Emma tumbled and hair-tousled, clinging to Aurora's leg. Mommy, don't leave again. Aurora lifted her, kissing her forehead. No, sweetheart. Mommy is here. Mommy won't ever leave again. Liam sat still, overcome. He had never asked her to choose him over that towering empire. But here she was, carving her declaration, not in boardrooms, but at their scarred wooden table in their cramped little home. She was no longer an heiress. She was simply his. That same day in the Whitmore Holdings boardroom, a palace of glass and chandeliers, Aurora entered in a plain black dress. No jewels, no makeup. Her footsteps echoed against marble as lawyers and shareholders whispered. At the head of the table, Harold Whitmore drummed his fingers, voice cold as steel. You're finally back. Now sit down, cancel this farce, and prepare for your wedding to Derek. Aurora strode forward, refusing the seat. She placed her papers firmly on the table. No, father. I came to sign this a full renunciation of my inheritance, my shares, the Whitmore name itself. The room erupted. A shareholder gasped, Aurora, do you know what you're saying? You'll lose everything. She met her father's eyes. I can't lose what was never mine. You made me an asset, a pawn. But today, I want to be human. I choose love. I choose family. Harold surged to his feet, voice booming. My daughter cannot destroy the Whitmore name for some pauper. Aurora's voice trembled, but did not break. You destroyed it first, when you turned love into a transaction. I won't live that way. Beneath the cold chandeliers, her pen carved her choice across the page. The ink shook, but the line held steady. Silence dropped heavy. For the first time, Harold Whitmore faced a daughter who had walked off his board. The board he thought eternal. Outside, Liam waited in the drizzle, gripping a battered umbrella. He wasn't allowed past security. He could only watch the silhouettes inside. His heart hammered half with fear, half with disbelief that Aurora might truly confront her father. Joe handed him the morning paper, heiress returning home, single dad, abandoned. The headline mocked him, but Liam's hands only shook harder. He feared not her betrayal, but being left behind once more. Then the glass doors parted. Aurora stepped out alone, no guards, no escort. The rain tangled her hair, but her eyes blazed clear. Liam rushed forward, words choking in his throat. Aurora, did you... She raised her chin lips, trembling yet proud. I signed. I'm no longer a Whitmore. I'm just Aurora, yours Emma's, and my own. Liam froze, tears mixing with the rain. He didn't sweep her up in grand gestures, he simply took her hand. In that touch, Aurora ceased being an heiress in a glass kingdom. She was a woman who had chosen love with her whole heart. That night, the Brooklyn apartment glowed late. Liam stood in the doorway, holding Emma, while Aurora entered, carrying only a small suitcase. No gowns, no crowns, just her steady eyes. Emma sprinted, clutching her tight. Mommy won't leave again. Aurora knelt, tears streaming. No, sweetheart. Mommy is home. Mommy will never leave again. Liam's throat ached. Once he thought this apartment was only a stopgap. But with Aurora stepping across its threshold, every crack in the wall, every broken chair felt like sacred witnesses to a new beginning. Aurora laid the signed papers on the table. This is proof. I have no fortune, no empire, no name to shield me. But I have you. I have Emma. And I have a home I can clean with my own hands, a life I can finally live. Liam's rough hand trembled as he touched her shoulder. Aurora, I have nothing to give you except a heart half shattered. Are you sure? Her eyes lit with tears and resolve. That's why I choose you. Because you don't bargain. You don't buy you love simply by being here. And that's something I never once had in all that glittering life. On the old sofa, Aurora nestled between Liam and Emma. Outside, the rain still fell, but in their hearts, the storm had gone quiet. For the first time, Aurora wasn't an heiress. She was a mother, and she was a woman loved. And to her, that was richer than any throne. Part 10. Second Chances. From a damp basement room, they built something new, a little cafe. On Saturday morning, Liam wore a rough canvas apron, smoothing the counter with an old hand plane. The reclaimed wood, once weathered and scarred, shone with honey tones under fresh linseed oil. Aurora balanced on a ladder, hands smudged with paint, sketching a mural of the Brooklyn Bridge arcing across the wall like an open arm. In the center shimmered two gilded words, second chances. Emma dashed around in her tiny apron, stitched with a crooked red heart. With crayons, she added stars to the mural and placed a glass jar on the counter. Pay what you can days. Liam froze when he saw it. Memories of counting pennies for Emma's milk swelled inside him. Yes, there had to be space here for the empty-handed who still carried hearts full of hope. Opening day, the block gathered outside. Coffee aroma rose mingled with cinnamon and butter from Aurora's fresh rolls. Joe flipped the switch. The string lights around the doorway glowed. Aurora held one end of the ribbon, Liam the other. Emma squeezed between shouting, 1, 2, 3. The ribbon snapped. Applause broke out. The first customer, an elderly woman with a frayed shawl, accepted her latte from Aurora's trembling hands. The foam bore a faint arc like a bridge. She sipped and smiled. You've given me a second chance at morning. Laughter spread. Liam winked at Emma, tapping a wooden spoon like a conductor's baton. Aurora gazed across mismatched chairs, patched walls, exposed wires, imperfections glowing under the hum of peace in her chest. Later, she found an envelope slipped into the jar. Inside, a folded check unsigned, except for a scrawled note for her colors. H. Her hands shook. She didn't tell a soul. She simply slid it into a drawer and looked at the mural's golden bridge, whispering thanks into the quiet. Every Thursday evening, chairs formed a circle on a thick rug in the corner. Single mothers, a night shift driver, a young student, and sometimes a salt-haired man who slipped in and out silently. On the wall hung Emma's crayon drawing 3 figures under a red roof with a bridge behind. Beneath it, Aurora had written, "Everyone deserves a safe crossing." One night, Liam spoke, voice husky but steady. I once thought surviving was my shame. I'd sit by Emma's bed, hand on her chest, counting each breath, afraid it would stop. Tonight I place my hand here on this table, and I know sometimes we survive, so we can be the breath for someone else. Stories spilled of debts, of loneliness, of bridges both literal and unseen. Aurora poured tea, listening her presence a balm. When her turn came, she showed the sketchbook that had kept her alive in rooms without windows. The salt-haired man lingered at the back, leaving quietly after placing another envelope in the jar. Later, Aurora opened it, proof of a large donation to Second Chances Foundation, funding free art classes for neighborhood children. At the bottom, only 2 words: Whitmore, Anonymous. Aurora stood long before Emma's framed drawing palm pressed against the painted bridge. She whispered, "Thank you, Mother." Turning, she saw Liam with Emma asleep on his shoulder, flour still dusting his apron. And in that instant, she knew forgiveness was not a single act, but a series of crossings step by step until the far side felt like home. A weekend evening, the Brooklyn Bridge glowed under sunset. No orchestra, no million-dollar gowns, just fairy lights strung by friends, wildflowers in jars, and borrowed wooden chairs. Aurora walked barefoot across the boards in a simple white dress. Emma scattered petals ahead, a tiny angel in lace. Liam wore a borrowed suit that fit poorly, but carried eyes that burned bright. They stood together before neighbors and friends. The officiant spoke simply. "Here where one life nearly ended, we witness a beginning." Liam's voice broke as he held Aurora's hand. "I can't promise wealth or ease, but I promise I will never let go, like that stormy night." Aurora smiled through tears. "I don't need castles. I need our small apartment, Emma's laughter, and your hand in mine. That is my world." Emma clapped. Shouting "kiss, kiss" laughter rang out as Liam leaned down, sealing their vow with a trembling kiss. On the bridge, where despair once howled, joy was born. Their rings were plain silver bands bought from a small shop. Yet they carried more weight than diamonds, the proof that love had risen from ashes. Afterward, the crowd gathered at Second Chances Cafe. The air smelled of cake. Aurora and Emma had baked lights glowed golden, and Joe strummed his battered guitar. Folk tunes filled the room as guests danced. Aurora twirled Emma in her arms, then placed her with Joe and turned to Liam's open hand. They swayed slowly, eyes locked. "I never thought I'd dance like this," she whispered. "Not in a Whitmore ballroom, but in a place barely big enough for a guitar and a few friends." Liam tightened his arm around her waist. "But this place has what those rooms never did, the truth." She nodded, tears glistening. When the song ended, Emma burst between them, arms wide. Family dance applause erupted. At the back table sat Harold Whitmore. He had slipped in quietly. Leaving, he placed a small book on the donation table, Second Chances. Inside, in his hand, not buildings, not companies. This is the true legacy. Aurora found it later collapsing to the floor in sobs. Liam knelt, arms around her, and together they let forgiveness settle like a gentle tide. Night deepened. Guests departed. The cafe fell quiet, lights glowing soft. Outside, the 3 of them sat on the steps, wrapped in one blanket. Before them, the Brooklyn Bridge blazed like a constellation hung low over the water. Emma sipped hot cocoa, eyes reflecting the city's shine. Sleep tugged at her voice, but her words were clear. "I love this bridge. It's not scary anymore. It's our bridge of hope." Aurora's tears spilled her face, pressed into her daughter's hair. Liam drew them both close, his chest trembling. Aurora lifted her eyes to him, whispering, "If you hadn't said, 'Don't jump,' that night, I wouldn't be here. And without Emma, I'd never know who I truly wanted to be." Liam kissed her forehead. "I didn't save you, Aurora. You chose to live. And today, you chose us. That's the greatest gift Emma and I will ever receive." Emma drifted into sleep, still smiling, tiny fingers curled around both of them. And there under the bridge of hope, they understood storms would come again. But together they could always cross. Because even when life seems lost, love can still hand us a second chance.